Producers on Star Trek once told me to figure it out when my blue screen was 20 feet too short for a motion control shot. Data's Offspring was on the line, and the actors were already in makeup. It's time for you to put your thinking cap on and figure out a solution.
Working with Star Trek for 5 years, oftentimes I was faced with a blue screen or green screen that actually wasn't large enough. You'd think that a show that dealt with special effects all the time would have a dedicated area for shooting blue screen or green screen, but that wasn't the case. Every time we approached a green screen or blue screen shot, it was created from scratch, which never seemed to make sense to me since we did it so often that it would seem like a gigantic blue screen stage that was already pre-lit, that the only thing I had to do was come in and just light the foreground. It would seem to make physical sense to me, but it wasn't the case. So every time we did it, they'd have to bring in the blue screen, we'd have to bring in the lights, we'd have to spend the time lighting the blue screen and then lighting our foreground. And then the next day, if we had another blue screen shot, we'd begin the whole process over again. Oftentimes, I would show up on the set and the blue screen material or whatever was already there. And they came in different shapes and sizes. And sometimes it just wasn't large enough, which presented problems. There was a sequence where Troy and Data were in the holodeck looking at Data's soon-to-be-conceived offspring. And since it was something that was going to be created, the offspring, his offspring, could be any alien being, almost anything that he conceived, and it's like having too many choices. He just wasn't sure exactly what his offspring should look like, and so they were in the holodeck. The holodeck, you conceive it and you can see it, and so they were talking about these different possibilities, and as they talked about it, those images would appear. But what made the shot challenging was that this was a motion control shot. In other words, when the first unit shot Troy and Data standing in the holodeck room, they actually dollied around and moved around them talking to then reveal these images that they were looking at. And this is the way Star Trek was done. The first unit would shoot half the image, and then the second unit would a lot of times shoot the other half. So I showed up onto the set, and they had like a 20-foot blue screen sitting there, and we brought in the track and the dolly and the pan and tilt head, and they were all controlled by the computer. It was all based on how they originally shot the first unit footage. And so we assembled it all together, and we pushed go, and the head started moving, and the dolly started moving, and it followed exactly what the original take was. The problem was the camera pointed this way, it dollied around, it pointed this way, it moved back. I had 20 feet. It saw about 40 feet. I couldn't do the shot. And so, I made a quick phone call and said, we need a bigger blue screen. We couldn't get a bigger blue screen. And I said, well, then we can't do the shot. And they said, well, you don't understand, Tom. The actors have been in makeup already for 4 or 5 hours for this, because there were going to be a series of people that were during that move would appear, morph into new beings. And these people were in makeup already, and they weren't about to send them home and begin the process again. So they said, basically, figure it out. Thanks a lot. So, sat down and really tried to figure out what could be done.
All right, you're in the captain's chair now. The camera is locked into a massive, sweeping motion control arc. The background is a glowing blue screen, but at the peak of the move, the lens pans completely off the fabric right into the studio rafters. You can't move the wall, and you can't reprogram the rig. Clock's ticking. How do you keep the illusion alive without ruining the shot? Put your answer in the comments right now.
So they said, basically, figure it out. Thanks a lot. So, sat down and really tried to figure out what could be done. And basically, I ended up putting that 20-foot blue screen on wheels and laid down a tape line on the ground that I could roll this back and forth. And so wherever the camera pointed, we would roll the blue screen in front of it. And as the camera pointed that way, we'd go back and forth. And so we created this traveling mat, you might call it, of this blue screen material. And I lit that whole space evenly, so no matter where the blue screen moved, it was always perfectly lit, and it actually worked. But at the end of the day, they just expected the results. They got the results, but no one really realized what we went through to be able to get that.
See, in Hollywood, you don't need a bigger budget. You just need a smarter angle. When the grid glitches, the OGs adapt. Hit that subscribe button, because the next time we'll be tackling exposure secrets that'll save your asset on the set. I'm Tommie D, and remember, be bold, be passionate, be awesome. Computer in program.
Beam me up, Scotty. Beam me up, Scotty.